Open Channel D. Welcome to Cocktails Mystery and the Sauces. My name is Catherine.
I'm Hannah.
And I'm Logan.
So today we will be speaking about the episode called The Four Steps Affair and the two first Man from U.N.C.L.E. movies that were based on other episodes on this episode as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I actually don't know which one it was, but either the Four Steps Affair took some stuff from the movies took some stuff from the Four Steps Affair, and I'm a bit unsure what the order was with that.
Yeah, so my guess is that they filmed additional footage and they just wanted to use it in the show as well, so that's why they made the Four Steps Affair, because if you watch it, you can see that the first part of the episode is not very connected to the second part of the episode.
Yeah, and they literally reuse footage from the movies and just dub in a different character name, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, and you can even see that Napoleon actually has two different hairstyles.
Yeah. So, should we go over what the Four Steps Affair of the episode is about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the Four Steps Affair is an episode with two sort of seemingly unrelated plots that are brought together but not all that well. So the episode opens with an uncle agent named Dancer, but not April Dancer, experiencing some kind of bodily malfunction, stumbling out of a car and into a home. It's super funny because Four Steps Affair is in black and white, and To Trap a Spy, which is one of the movies that uses the footage from it, is in color. And it's really obvious in the color version that he's bleeding to death, but in the black and white one he just kind of is clearly something's wrong with this guy, but I don't know what. Yeah. So he stumbles into this mansion in the woods, and he calls out for Angela while he's there, and he sits down in front of the fireplace, and Angela arrives, and he's like, "Oh, thank God you're here, it looks like the phone's been cut off, we're being chased by Thrush, blah, 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 blah," and Angela's like, "Oh, being chased by Thrush, you say?" And then she helps get him murdered. And... So, Angela has a conversation with the other Thrush agents about, quote, the boy, and then we cut to Waverly's office, where Ilya and a bearded man with a very iffy accent named Kit Kitteridge, who I'm pretty sure, isn't that an American Girl doll? I swear to God that there's an American Girl doll whose name is Kit Kitteridge.
I'm gonna look it up. Let's see.
So, anyway, Kit Kitteridge, I think he's supposed to be Australian, but his accent is very inconsistent.
Oh my God.
Am I right?
There is.
Yes!
You're right!
So, Kit Kitteridge, the world's first uncle agent / American Girl doll. He and Ilya are briefed on what's going on, which is to say that the young heir to some kind of high government position in an unnamed South Asian country has just been in the United States for dental surgery, and he is believed to be the reincarnation of some kind of holy figure. And he is with his nurse, who helped him through the dental surgery, and his protector, whose name is Kaza. And the child's name is Mickey, and he's supposed to be, I don't know, more or less Indian, but it's clearly a white kid. And their job is to protect him because he's ushering in an age of peace in this new country. And unfortunately, Thrush wants to kill him because, that's what they do. And so he's been put in some safe house location to protect him from Thrush because Dancer knew his location. Also, I just have to note that Kaza is the potentate of Shantai, and that's the name of the country, and the whole time they kept talking about Kaza and Shantai, I kept thinking about the old torrenting service Kaza, and the fact that there's a video game series called Shantai, which is about, a cute genie girl with huge boobies. And so I'm like, okay, so the BitTorrent client of the game about booby genies, great. So anyway, so Ilya and Kit go to try to locate Mickey and Kaza and Kelly, the nurse. And there's some very weirdly overdubbed dialogue in the car while he picks them up. And meanwhile, Napoleon goes to look for Dancer, and while he's at the house, or on his way to the house, Angela hitches a ride in the back of his car, and he's like, "Hey, are you here to kill me?" And she's like, "No." And makes it very clear that she is in fact 100% there to kill him. And they go back to her house and they flirt a lot and it's awkward. And then she's like, "Hey, why don't you stand in front of that open window a lot?" And Napoleon is like, "That seems really suspicious." And so he turns some really bright lights on in behind the window so that the Thrush agents who were going to shoot him through the window get blinded instead. And then he climbs out the window down the drain pipe, and what happens after that? Okay, so then Ilya and Mickey and Kit and Kaza and Kelly are caught in a shootout where Thrush is attempting to attack them as they come out of the safe house location, which means they've clearly been compromised because no one's supposed to know the safe house location. And Kaza is shot and Kit goes with him to the hospital, and Ilya drives Kelly and Mickey to the next safe location. But part of the way through this happening, their whole car gets kidnapped. The car is put on a truck and brought to what looks like an old southern plantation home, and then they're all put in jail. And Napoleon and Angela, meanwhile, just touch the heck out of one another, and
yep.
Yeah. And
Napoleon just loves touching women who want to kill him.
Yep. And anyway, then Ilya, so Napoleon, after he escapes from Angela's clutches, he gets to Waverly's office and spends a really long time doing his hair in the mirror with Kitteridge and Waverly watching, and the three of them talk about the fact that no one knew where the safe house location is, so somehow they've been compromised, and so they've realized it probably has to be Kaza, because there aren't a lot of other options, so they go to the hospital to check in on him, and meanwhile, again, it keeps cutting back and forth between these two plots, which is, again, I think to disguise the fact that not all of this footage was originally intended to be used for the same thing. And so while we cut back to Ilya, he's, in this Thrush prison with everyone, and he, manages to make a break for it, and he sends Mickey out the window. But unfortunately, the child comes back because he's worried about Ilya and Kelly, and they all end up immediately back in prison, which is totally a wasted bit of time in the episode because nothing really happens. And
this whole episode feels like they're just trying to find ways to either use stuff or from the past or just make it longer.
Yeah, 100%. It's really weird. And, so then back at the hospital, Napoleon and Kaza and Kit are talking, and Napoleon, he seems to very foolishly, lean towards Kaza in a way that allows Kaza to steal his gun. And so Kaza appears to shoot Waverly and Napoleon and then run away. And the nurse comes in and screams and is like, "Oh my god, dead bodies!" And then Napoleon and Waverly get up and are like, "Ha ha ha, our plan worked perfectly. We planted a tracker in that gun, we knew he'd steal it." So then they go to track Kaza, and Napoleon and Kit go to liberate Ilya and everyone. Kit gets shot in the arm, they save them. Mickey is like, "Please don't murder the Thrush agents. They will be punished enough by Thrush." And then the whole episode ends at the airport where Kelly is fretting, Napoleon is flirting with her, and Ilya returns from an important secret mission Mickey sent him on to purchase bubblegum. And if that's not a perfect explanation of exactly the kind of episode this is, then...
Yeah. I'm still kind of confused of what was really Angela's point.
She's just a Thrush agent.
Yeah.
Her whole thing basically is she was a Thrush agent who betrayed Dancer, and then she was hoping to convince Napoleon to basically do exactly the same thing and stand in front of the same open window where Dancer was shot.
That makes sense. I was really confused about her motivation to in this episode, and that makes a lot more sense. I somehow missed it.
Her motivation is that she's evil.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's...
I wanted to talk about how Mickey, I guess, is supposed to be like the Dalai Lama.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. I was so out of it watching this episode. I didn't. What I noticed the most was Napoleon singing while combing his hair and being like, "Oh yes, he does make weird mouth noises."
Yeah, but basically, I guess we could make parallels between Mickey's fictional country and Tibet, maybe, because it's a political issue even now, because Tibet is supposed to be like China, but it's not China and stuff, and we could draw parallels in this way, because it's one of those episodes that's based on an actual story, and I guess him becoming the Lama happened in the 50s, so it would be a pretty fresh story for it's 1965. So
I actually didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was born in 35. And he would be about he would be a pretty young man still in the 60s, but he became...
In the 50s he would have been pretty young.
Yeah, in the 50s he would be very young, yeah.
That's really interesting. Mickey is an interesting character. I almost like him, but he doesn't quite work for me. He's... A lot of the kids in this show are actually, surprisingly likable, even though, children, particularly in older TV shows, are often super annoying. Mickey kind of teeters for me right on the border of that. There's certain things that he does that I think are really cute, and then, other stuff that it's haha, yes, very funny, precocious child, got it.
Oh, yeah. When he uses, that advanced vocabulary, therapeutic, and then Ilya is like, how old are you? And he's like, I'm 10, and then Ilya is just like, wow.
Yeah, I feel like they almost managed to make a really sort of cute point about him as a character at the end, where, Kelly says something about, oh, so much rests on his little shoulders, and is, very upset that, a small child has to be in charge of, the security of a country. And Napoleon points out that, this is his job, and that he knows it's his job. and that, like, he's a kid who's been trained to be very adult-like in that way, but then you find out that secretly Mickey has asked Elia to get him, like, a giant container of bubblegum, and it's like, okay, he really is still just a kid, even if he is, you know, behaving much more adult-like in many ways. And I feel like if they had done it in a slightly less, like, I don't know, it almost worked.
Yeah, it gets kind of sad when you think about it, and then you're just kind of like, oh.
I personally have no problems with Mickey. But I get to where you're coming from, because it's a pretty difficult character to pull off, I guess. It's also an interesting episode, when it comes to Ilya's character establishment, because we get this whole bit about him not really connecting to children, and then later he actually puts some effort into it. And the fact that Ilya buys him the bubblegum is kind of a big deal, because he wasn't really quite into it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, Ilya's interactions with Mickey are really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and like that, maybe that's almost like him bringing bubblegum as like almost like, is that like character development in an episodic show?
Yeah. It's supposed to be that. It's supposed to be that because Ilya had a character arc in this episode, basically.
Yep, he does.
There's a bunch of really good lines. Like, there's a point where Mickey says something about his relationship with Kelly and about how, you know, he understands her and her moods and her motivations, basically. And Ilya just kind of turns and looks at him and says, "Are you sure you've never been married?" And I feel like it's a good scene, and it's a very funny kind of, you know, Ilya-y line. Unfortunately, it comes from the fact that Kelly is, like, completely hysterical.
Yeah.
She is not a particularly likable innocent, unfortunately. She's just, like, she spends the whole episode either freaking out or being like, "No one will ever think I'm pretty because I'm a nurse." Which is like, what?
I don't get that. There's a lot of people who are into nurses.
Yeah, like, that's literally a fetish. Like, a sexy nurse costume is, like, as old as time.
Oh, again? Yeah, that's like content, right? Oh my god.
Yeah, so it was really weird. She has, like, there's a whole thing at one point in the episode where she says something like, "Yeah, my boyfriend is breaking up with me because I'm a nurse." Like, your boyfriend is just an asshole. It has nothing to do with you being a nurse.
Yeah, it's like him. It's like that sounds like a really like terrible excuse he just invented on the spot.
Yeah, no, but like nurses work weird shifts, and you see that she has to travel at night with strangers. So basically, it is quite a weird job, I guess, for a woman at that time.
Yeah.
What is it like?
Maybe
wasn't like actually. Weren't nurses, like, traditionally always women, though?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you got to understand that when you were a man in the 60s, you want a girlfriend who stayed at home.
Oh, yeah, I forgot! Yeah. Even though nurse is like one of the most like female gendered occupations there are, I guess that's still not good enough as a housewife.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a very sort of iffy bit right at the end where, like, Mickey takes her aside and is like, your devotion to your line of duty makes you beautiful no matter your clothes. And it's like, no, seriously, does no one working on this episode know that nurses' uniforms are a fetish? Like,
everyone on the show was aware of how was aware of they were so aware of BDSM, but I guess they just have no knowledge of nurse fetish.
It's too heterosexual. That's the problem.
Yeah, I've given up on making this show be rated PG-13.
I feel like there's PG-13 movies where people discuss these things. You just can't describe them. That's the difference.
Yeah,
that
makes sense.
This is absolutely wildly, completely off topic, but my students the other day decided that a very fun activity for a group of them to do would be to write down the names of every movie that you would not be allowed to watch in school. And I was like, all of them, every movie. You can't watch any movies in school. And they were like, It, The Deer Hunter, Good Morning Vietnam. I was like, yeah, no, you're right. You can't watch any of these movies. Sit down. And anyway, that just made me think about what you can and cannot say in a PG-13 movie versus, what you can and cannot say in a rated R movie. Part of it has to do with your level of descriptiveness.
Yeah. We should get back to the episode. So, I've mentioned this earlier, but I remember Hannah saying that you had canons like Napoleon being the kind of person of ADHD to make weird noises. Mm-hmm. Well, in this episode, he got some weird singing while he combs his hair. He just is making all these like it's not really like I wouldn't call it actual skilled singing. It's just him making singing noises while he combs his hair, and I'm just like, oh my god, Hannah is right.
What I love about that scene is that Napoleon basically transforms from early season 1 Napoleon to late season 1 Napoleon in a span of 2 minutes, because the whole sequence with Angela was very early season 1 Napoleon, and it's not quite what we see in the second half of the season, I guess.
And I think that part of that is because of that reused footage from the film adaptation of the pilot episode.
Yeah.
Which the stuff with Angela came from that adaptation.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically they shot it in order to put it into movies, but they also had to use it in the show because they were economical about it, I guess. So it's a funny episode to watch because it's quite a lot of dissonance, I would say, because tonally scenes are very different. For example, the whole stuff with Mickey is very child friendly and family friendly, anyone could watch it. But Napoleon and Angela is basically sexy James Bond stuff, and it's completely different.
Yeah, when he finds Angela in the car, and she's like, what if I'm here to kill you? And he was like, what if you are here to kill me? He searches her with his gun. And
but if you are,
rubs his gun all over her body, and it's not sexy. It's just this is a lesson in what you are not supposed to do when it comes to gun safety. And it's sexy.
Napoleon has no concept of gun safety or knife safety or really just being safe in general.
Yeah, it's definitely the Angela parts are very weird. I would describe them as theoretically sexy, but not sexy in practice.
Maybe if you are like a heterosexual man, it's sexy. Who knows?
Maybe.
we
But I don't know. I feel like anyone who understands that, like, a gun is not something that you want to, like, rub someone's boobies with, like, would hopefully understand that this is not sexy.
It's probably someone's fetish.
Yeah.
There's also a line when they're... So, actually, there's a really delightful bit when they're walking around Angela's house, where Napoleon just, like, pokes everything with a fencing foil, and, like, pokes a statue, and pokes a curtain, and pokes the stairs, and she's like, what are you doing? And he explains that, well, paranoia runs in his family from his, his grandma back in Kansas. And she's like, wait, you're from Kansas? And his response is, isn't everyone? And so he, like, pokes around in her closet, and she's like, oh, I bet your grandma always used to check in the closet for prowlers. And he was like, oh, she did, and she never found any. And, like, again, this is all done as if it's sexy. Because there's nothing sexier than your paranoid grandma.
Hot.
But like
then,
speaking of sexy, if you notice, there are very subtle differences in the TV version and the movie version, because like both scenes that we mentioned were shot twice, I guess. I mean, not quite twice, but like recut or stuff, because in the movie version, Napoleon searches Angela with the gun, and he goes all the way.
Yeah. So I actually, I watched Four Steps, or rewatched Four Steps, like, right before I watched To Trap a Spy, like, same afternoon.
Yeah.
And I think that they actually did shoot it twice for most of these scenes, once in black and white and once in color. Because there's enough differences, not only in terms of, like, length of scenes and stuff like that, but also just weird little, like, timing choices in terms of how people say stuff. And so, yeah, Napoleon does way more gun groping in the movie version, and in the movie version, I think Angela has much more cleavage out.
Maybe, yes.
She seems to be boobier in the movie version than in the TV version.
Like the booby genie?
Yes. And, and so it's interesting because when she kind of pokes around in the closet with him, which sounds weirder than it intended to be, she, in the episode version, says something like, I'm gonna go change, but she doesn't go near the closet, she just, like, leaves. And in the movie version, she's like, touching all of the fabric in the closet and is like, oh, which of these things should I change into? What would you like? And it's much more sort of like played up as sensual. But in both cases, Napoleon's response to what should I change into is anything, ... But a boy.
But a boy.
Which is like the most have I mentioned I'm heterosexual today thing anyone could ever say.
Oh yeah, I am so straight that I have to like make sure that like, oh, you better not change into a boy.
Wink wink. Like, why would you, if you were legitimately a heterosexual man, why would that even come into your head?
Yeah.
Like, I would assume that the normal, like, straight guy response to that would be like, nothing, ? You know, like, it would totally be an invitation to get naked. And instead, he's just like, don't be a dude!
I'm not in the mood neutral voice today.
Yeah,
Just
it's really weird.
Yeah, I literally can't figure out if, like, their intention was to be ha gay joke, or to be like Napoleon suppressing his bias urges.
Yeah,
I can't tell. I have no
It
idea.
probably was a gay joke, actually.
Yeah, honestly, it probably was, but still, a part of me is just like, nice.
No, but also, like, speaking of differences between the scenes, if you noticed, there was a moment when Napoleon was sitting in an armchair by a fireplace, and he was poking the fireplace with the fencing sword. So basically, in the TV version, he had his jacket on. In the movie version, he had his jacket off. Have you noticed?
Oh, he got a little more comfortable in the movie
Yeah.
version.
Oh, I actually I did not notice these differences at all. So maybe it's not even like reused footage. It's like completely like filmed again.
I think that they just like filmed to take in one day probably, because they filmed all the same stuff. Some of it was reused, some of it wasn't, and they went more raunchy with the movie version, basically.
Yeah, because it doesn't have to be on TV. Because the movies, it's not like, it's all dark, like you just get all sexy with your loved one while watching Napoleon solo. No.
No, but it also makes you think about how much they were actually aware of what was sexual and what wasn't, because they could see that they clearly knew the difference. So sometimes in the TV show there's a lot of sexual stuff, and we kind of like go, ooh, did they know? Did they not? And I think they knew.
Yeah. I think we talked in an earlier episode about the fact that, no, this was before Logan or I had seen any of the movies, but we had talked about the fact that the movies are generally less homoerotic than the TV episodes. And I mean, this definitely seemed correct to me in both of the movies. There was just so much Napoleon chasing after women in the movies, like way more than there ever is in the TV show.
But at the same time, you have only seen 2 movies, and there are 8.
I don't know if I can handle that much Horndog Napoleon.
No, actually, what I mean is that the horniest movies are the first 2 ones.
Okay, that's good.
Interesting.
Like, the spy with my face was just like, it was constant, just Napoleon like, being horny.
The spy with my face kept almost being like, this is gonna turn into softcore. Like,
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. But like movies based on the second season episodes were horny as well, but less horny than the first one.
And I think that's because they're still trying. I think they're still trying to find their stride, and they were looking to James Bond for a lot of inspiration.
And like movies based on season 3 and season 4 were almost completely the same as the TV episodes. Like there was no added stuff. So basically, it's kind of, it evolved, but at the same time it got less less nuanced, I would say, because you would see the same stuff on TV in the movies. Well,
that's very interesting.
Maybe they expected people to go to the movies and like watch the original stuff, but people probably went to the movies and said like, the same stuff as on TV because people don't remember these little differences we see. You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they don't watch like both movies and the episode all in one day.
Yeah.
Like that's just not how it was back then.
So basically
Yeah.
they would see the double affair and the spy with my face, and they would think that it's the same stuff. But like we know that they are different, but they're different in subtle enough ways, so it wouldn't be that into your face, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very interesting.
And personally, like I had canon that Napoleon really is just as horny as he is in these movies. We just don't see it.
So I think my issue was less Napoleon being a horn dog and more the way women reacted to him in the movies. Because
yeah, true.
Both of these two movies really, really wanted to convince us that Napoleon Solo is cool. And I'm sorry, Napoleon Solo's a weirdo. Like, he is not a cool man. He is like a strange grandpa in a young man's body. And, like, I completely buy the idea that Napoleon is, like, a total horn dog all the time. And I buy the idea that he is weird and charming enough that women are like, oh, okay, sure, let's give it a go. But I do not buy the idea that he's like James Bond light and that women just are like, oh, did you see Napoleon Solo across the street right now? Like, and that's kind of how the women in the movies behave, is like he's just God's gift to women.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, oh, let's slather that Napoleon foreign.
And he also is, at least in these first two movies, there's just a lot more, like, casual misogyny. And that's actually not even in the show either, which is interesting. So, like, there's a whole scene where he literally takes the bikini out of a woman's suitcase, which is creepy in and of itself. And then he says something like, well, I don't think this is a shrinkage accident, so it must be evolution. And, like, looks at her like, hey, teeny bikini. And she says something in response to this about how, like, she had to cancel her trip because of him. And his response to her talking about wanting to still tan is, and I wrote this down because it's awful, turn over often. I like mine medium rare, both sides. Like, ew. Like, I'm sorry, if a man ever said that to me, like, I would literally never speak to them again.
Yeah,
I think I must maybe what if your husband did it as a complete joke just to make fun of Napoleon?
If it were within the context of him having seen this, maybe. But if those words came out of his mouth unbidden, we would have to have a serious conversation. And there's a whole ton of stuff like that that's just like, whoa, like, they really are going for that James Bond, like, he just pushes women around and they like
so
it.
much.
Ah.
Yeah, so much. It's basically James Bond but American.
Which is to say James Bond, but so much worse.
Yeah.
And basically, at the same time, you can see how different it is from the show, and the show went there less and less with every season, I would say, because, yeah, the show started seeing Napoleon as a weird grandfather as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Robert Vaughn is just too much of a weirdo to play, like, a straight up, like, sexy anti-hero man.
Yeah, because, like, just the way he acts, like, his whole, like, like how he acts like in everything. Like I've seen Teenage Caveman, and he has that same aesthetic. That whole aesthetic that he has just is so wrong for a Playboy.
Yeah.
The whole energy. He does not have Playboy energy.
No, he does not. He does seem like he would be the kind of guy who could, in fact, convince many women to sleep with him, but not because he's a playboy, because he's interesting, Like, it's like there's something about him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also... yeah, I definitely think I see what you mean now. Like, I definitely do think he's horny, but just not in the way these movies portray him to be.
He really is. I appreciate Vaughn. He was an American treasure.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty heartbreaking to see how the American industry didn't know what to do with him, because they wanted him to be like a sexy guy. I don't know who they wanted him to be, but he wasn't. His early TV appearances almost all of them included him trying for.
Let's make Robert Vaughn cry. It's because he has gigantic anime eyes.
Oh yeah, he does. He's like I literally covered my face when I said that because I'm like, yeah.
He's like
God,
a precious
God. When I was watching the movies, okay, for the longest time, I thought Napoleon / Robert Vaughn. I thought he had like dark brown eyes. Well, I was watching the movies, and they had a little bit of green in them. He has hazel eyes. He has hazel anime eyes.
That's true.
It's really interesting. Both he and David McCallum have very sort of like neotenized faces. Like they have the kind of sort of almost like childish shape faces. So they have that kind of like cartoon boy faces rather than real person faces.
Yeah. Like the kind of man face that I have, like just cute, like cartoon faces. Yeah, because neither of them could ever be like a total like smooth playboy, the chiseled jawline, he had his nice piercing eyes and pointy nose. Like, oh yeah, no.
They're not punks.
No.
When I first started watching Man from U.N.C.L.E, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine from high school, and I was explaining what I was watching, and they were like, oh, that movie? And I was like, no, the TV show. And their response was, I don't think I know the TV show, and I sent them a picture, and they were like, wait, people thought these men were attractive? You're so mean! Their response was, God, back in the 1960s, you could just be a dude, like a regular dude, and people would be like, God, look at that hunk.
Yeah.
And
it was even like that in the 50s too, because like actually I've been getting like really into like Dean Martin lately, and like I see pictures of him shirtless, and like he kind of has a bit of a dad bod.
Oh, we should be very clear that Napoleon is in fact naked for longer than expected.
Oh yeah, in spite of my face, like he actually, you see him shirtless. You see him without a shirt in the mirror, and then like he gets in the shower, like, okay, you don't see his full body, but you see his naked feet, and it's implied that I forgot which women he was sleeping with. There's so many women he gets with in that movie, the woman, like it's implied that she like takes off her clothing, and then it's just her naked feet, and then like it's Napoleon's naked lower legs and feet and her naked lower legs and feet in the shower, and they're like wrapping around each other, and I'm like, ah!
My note for that was just, this must have been so awkward to film. Because they're in a shower stall together, like, standing up, and they, like, play footsies naked in the shower stall, which is not a thing any normal person has ever done. And, and so you just watch this whole, like, let's run our wet toes up down each other's legs. It's like, I'm good, thank you. But you do see Napoleon, like, wandering around in just a towel for a while, and, you know, he's just, like, he's a guy. Like, he doesn't have chiseled abs, or, like, he's also very smooth.
Yeah, he's like a seal. He's like a smooth seal. Like a smooth...
Okay,
not a hairy man.
Wait a second, okay. Just try imagining Robert Wong with chiseled abs. It wouldn't work.
Yeah, like you really could just be a dude, and then people would still find you really attractive, and it's great.
Those were the days.
So, I mean, we have already started talking about the movies. I guess we could talk about them separately. The first one is called To Trap a Spy. What did you think about it?
I won't lie, because I had just watched Four Steps Affair, I was not totally paying attention to the entirety of To Trap a Spy, because I was like, oh, this is literally what I just watched. So it's, To Trap a Spy is a combination of footage from Four Steps Affair and the Vulcan Affair. And it's really interesting because the whole thing with Dancer at the beginning makes more sense in the context of To Trap a Spy, but I think actually the Vulcan Affair suffers from the additional plot beats. Like, I think
definitely.
I think Vulcan Affair works better as the original episode it was, rather than as part of this, but I think that the Four Steps Affair stuff works better in the movie.
That's pretty much how I feel too. Literally, like it kind of felt like it was just bogging down the Vulcan Affairs plot, and it literally like ends the exact same way with them in like the steam room and everything, and Napoleon on the airplane. Like it ends in the exact same way. Yeah. So like
basically, the Vulcan Affair was originally a pilot for the show, and it was like an hour and 10 minutes long, I guess. And it was shot in color back in 1963. So they decided to release it as a movie later, and it was too short for a movie. That's why they added the First Steps Affair stuff and made it longer. But what is especially interesting about it, I guess, is that they didn't reshoot the stuff with Mr. Ellison.
Yeah, so that's. I actually wrote down the stuff from the solo pilot looks like it was filmed in color, which is correct. But I think some of the stuff from the Four Steps Affair actually looks like it was colorized. So there's a difference in the like quality of the footage between the two episodes, and there's a difference in like how the color appears. So it's very obvious which pieces they're taking from which episode. But the stuff that's from the pilot, aside from the weirdness with, you know, Kit and Napoleon's wrong haircut and the fact that everyone is way hornier, there's the wrong boss. So it's, instead of Mr. Waverly, it is Mr. Allison, right?
Yeah.
And he's played by some
Kuluva.
Yeah.
Will Kuluva.
Yes, Will Kuluva. Yeah. Will Kuluva. And it's interesting. That's one weird difference, and then the fact that Thrush is now Wasp.
Yeah.
Yep. That really confused me too. I just was like, Wasp? What's Wasp?
Yeah, I really like the idea that like Napoleon and Ilya are fighting against the forces of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants.
Oh So basically, so many options to choose from because they basically could come up with anything, and we even know that thrush isn't really an abbreviation for anything in the show. I mean, it's supposed to be an abbreviation in the books, but in the show it's never explained. And basically, it's thrush, and it could. And the thing is that in the James Bond movies and books as well, James Bond has a nemesis organization that's called SMERSH. And SMERSH is actually a Russian organization that was like a counter spy organization, but in the James Bond universe, it has a different meaning. So it's not officially a Russian organization, and it has a different meaning. But basically, they thought that Slush sounded too much like Smash, and they wanted to change it to Wasp officially. They shot the pilot using Slush actually, I think, maybe, or they revised it later. But basically, like in the vocal affair, they use the word trash, and in the pilot they use the word like not to get confused with James Bond, and they were afraid of legal action, I guess. But when they actually started developing the show after the pilot, they were more relaxed about it.
That's very interesting. I
didn't know that.
No. There's a lot of very bad overdubbing in both To Trap a Spy and actually in the Four Steps Affair. Like, it's not...
Oh, yeah, like, they dub in like, whenever, like, Angela mentions Dancer's name, they always dub it in, so it's just, like, it's like, there is Dancer! There is Dancer! It's just like...
Yeah, and I think some of the wasps are the same in To Trap a Spy, where, like, it would have been Thrush in the episode that they turned, or vice versa, they turned it into Wasp. But there's, you can tell that things were kind of, like, pasted together later on, because, like, usually they're better in Man from U.N.C.L.E. about, like, not having those kind of awkward, like, his name is Steve moments.
Yeah.
And like even in Four Steps Affair, like there's a whole scene where like Ilya and Kelly and Mickey are in the car, and like usually when characters are in cars in Man from U.N.C.L.E., like I think in terms of technical limitations of the day, they did tend to overdub it, but I think that they must have either, like, recorded something inside the car and something outside the car and then matched the sound up later, or they just did a really good job overdubbing most of the time, because usually it looks like the characters are really talking, but in this particular scene, not only is it very clear that these three people are sitting in a booth having this conversation, like, they don't sound like they're in a car at all, but there's no Foley at all. So it's silent as the three of them are in a car inside a truck being dragged to a secret location. Like, you hear no car noise, you hear no road noise, there's no rustling, there's no sounds of people moving in the car. It's just silence and like, do you think we're being kidnapped? I suspect we'll know when we get to our location. It's very like... It's jarring how kind of poorly put together Four Steps Affair is in some ways, and it definitely feels like, well, we have this extra footage on the cutting room floor, let's turn it into something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So basically, I guess there's not much to talk about in The Trap of Spy because we have already covered the Vulcan Affair. But in A Spy with My Face, a lot of additional stuff, right?
Yes. However, Before we go on to Spy with My Face, one thing that I thought was really interesting about the solo pilot version of Vulcan Affair in To Trap a Spy. So we talked when we did Vulcan Affair about how at the end he's looking out this airplane window at Elaine returning to her family, and how, like, he actually looks kind of sad, and there's this moment where it's like it seems almost like he has this, like, longing for family, and then he, you know, hits on the stewardess, and it's kind of, the moment is ruined. In the solo pilot version, he actually doesn't look sad when he looks out the window. He, like, smiles at her and then turns away, and there's no sort of, like, it doesn't seem like there's that sort of moment of nostalgia or bitterness, and then he immediately just, like, is like, so, are we joining the Mile High Club, lady? And it's very interesting to me in terms of, because we talked about it in terms of the fact that, like, he looks less and less sad like that over the course of the series as he becomes closer to Ilya. And thinking about the idea of the pilot as presenting Napoleon as a much more James Bond-like figure, I think it makes sense that they wouldn't want to have that kind of sadness. And I love that it ended up back in the series, because I think that makes him a better character.
Yeah,
definitely.
In the Vulcan Affair, there's definitely more heart to it than in the movie version.
Yeah.
And they probably understood it too, because the TV version is, I mean, it's a solid episode, and the movie not so much.
Yeah, agreed.
Should we move on to the Spy of My Face?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This does get kind of softcore porny at times.
I'm sorry. The whole scene with Bozo the Clown.
I
blocked that out. I literally forgot about that. My brain blocked that out.
It's like the best thing about the movie.
So let's back up slightly. So The Spy with My Face is partially oh god, which episodes is it? It's
Double Affair.
It's the Double Affair plus just other stuff, I believe. There's not like things from a specific other episode. So there's some repeated footage actually from To Trap a Spy, particularly right at the very beginning. The whole point where they go into this mansion to check and see what's going on with Thrush there, and it's Napoleon and Kitteridge again, and it's literally the exact same sequence from the end of Four Steps Affair. And except that mysteriously Kit gets stabbed instead of shot. And so there is some repeated footage from that as well. But the most of the additional stuff in The Spy with My Face versus The Double Affair is expanding on Napoleon's relationship with Sandy, who is the airline attendant from The Double Affair, who he goes out to dinner with at the beginning of The Double Affair, and we don't really know anything about their relationship other than that. In The Spy with My Face, we're given some more backstory that it seems to imply that she's like more of a long-term girlfriend almost than some of the other ladies he messes around with. And we're introduced to like her roommate Taffy, and there's a whole super weird scene where Ilya hits on Taffy, and although it's half-hearted. But so anyway, most of the extra stuff seems to be about these two ladies, and it's interesting stuff. And very specifically, there is one scene where Napoleon is supposed to be going to Sandy's for a date, and he's late. And when he shows up, she's like, no, you can't come in, and he just gets into the house anyway, which is super creepy. And then she, like, hides her face on her bed and is like, no, you can't touch me, and he touches her anyway, which, again, super creepy. But then there's this whole thing with, like, she has, like, one of those, like, blow-up clowns that, like, if you punch it, it, like, tips over but then stands back up. And she has brought it into her bed and has been, like, kissing its nose and, like, you'll never leave me, Boppo!
It's I'm pretty sure the clown is Bobo.
Bobo,
it's like
Bobo, yeah.
Bobo.
She's like, Bobo is a true gentleman, and it 100% looks like this lady's gonna, like, have a nice time with her blow-up clown. And Napoleon is like, excuse me, can I move this gentleman from your bed? Like, it's really uncomfortable.
And he moves the clown's inflatable, and is like, three's a crowd, and then he goes in and then kisses her on the bed and stuff. I'm like, well, the clown's there, and you want to know, and then actually, like, before, like, he put the clown on the ground, like, he like let out the air hole in the clown, so it starts to deflate, and then we learn that the clown had a microphone in it.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, they were being listened in on, and I'm like, how did she even let this clown be put in here? Like, oh my, did they know that she has a clown fetish?
Well, is there a word for a clown fetish? Like, I know fear of clowns is like coralophobia. Is there a version of
Coralophilia?
Yeah. God, Sandy.
Oh God, don't Google that.
It makes sense because I wasn't into some clown in this film.
Yeah. It's a weird scene. Also, Sandy and Taffy, 100%. So they're supposed to be roommates, and there's a whole scene at the very beginning where Taffy picks up the phone and Napoleon thinks he's talking to Sandy, and he's like, I miss you, I love you, blah, 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 and she's kind of like, who is talking to me right now? And anyway, she gives Sandy the phone, but we see that they sleep in the same bedroom in, like, twin beds that are 2 feet apart, like it's a 1950s sitcom and they're a man and wife.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one who got gay vibes between them.
Yeah,
like,
I did.
Sandy
absolutely needs to dump Napoleon and just embrace the fact that she and Taffy are already living together in a domestic partnership.
It would be better, yeah.
They'll be way happier together than Sandy with Napoleon.
100%. There's even a super cute thing where, like, after Sandy gets off the phone with Napoleon, like, she starts smoking a cigarette and she sits down on the edge of her bed and she says, I have a date tonight and I have nothing to wear. And Taffy's response is, that'll never go out of style. And it's like, oh, honey bunches, your roommate wants to see you naked.
Nice. Yeah, speaking of first India romance.
It's so bad.
The best thing about it is that he actually says, like, a very weird thing about setting fire to an eagle.
I think I missed him talking about setting fire to an eagle. What?
Eagle.
Yeah.
Eagle. It was eagle.
Igloo! I remember that.
Yeah. You know, I've never confused those words together before, but now I can totally see the similarities.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, you know what? I get it.
So he was the first Russian lieutenant who set off the fire to an igloo.
Yeah, that's supposedly his claim to fame, which is a weird thing to claim. Like,
Ilya, you're just going and destroying some indigenous people's home. Wow, you're terrible. You're terrible, Ilya. I hate you. Ilya is canceled.
Yeah, but it's funny because Ilya is supposed to be a competent agent, I guess, and his past is kind of bonkers. Like, what did he do? Was he like a very clumsy officer?
I sort of took it as actually like that was a that was almost like an accomplishment. Like, wow, he's so good at destruction that he can make ice be on fire.
Yeah. But what it sounded to me was like he's so like clumsy that he can destroy anything.
We've talked before about the idea of Ilya as, you know, an uwu anime boy, and the idea that he's like one of those moe characters who's like, oh, I lost my glasses and now I'm clumsy and light everything on fire. I like
God,
that.
I was drinking water.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because the whole thing with Ilya and Taffy, like his hitting on her is really weird. So there's the whole thing with him talking about, you know, setting an igloo on fire, but also like he says something to her at one point about the fact that he's secretly a Russian spy, and she kind of giggles like, "Oh, ha, ha, how funny!" And he asks what she really does for a living, and her response is, "Oh, I'm a linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles," or something like that. And it's actually like it's about as cute of a like Ilya flirting with a lady conversation as I feel like he has. But then later on, when he's, like, talking to her again, they're having what I think is supposed to be a romantic conversation, because he says, like, oh, I'd love to teach you all about Russia. And her response is, your romance? And his response is, our theater.
Method acting,
like,
right?
Yeah, it's like, okay, he suddenly has realized that his attempt to, you know, like, in some way get something out of this woman has gotten him in hot water, and now she actually wants to sleep with him, and he's like, oh, crap.
Yeah, it's weird as ever.
There's an Italian agent in The Spy with My Face. He was also in The Double Affair, but I can't remember his name. And he's the one that they like come in on when he's shaving in the office. So he has a little bit more to do in this version than he did with The Double Affair. Yeah, yep. And it's interesting because, you know, we talking about how, like, the movies, particularly these early ones, are more sort of like James Bondy and less homoerotic. There's a very, very charged scene between Ilya and the Italian agent at the end of the movie. Ooh. So it's when Napoleon is, like, making out with Sandy at the end. Sandy's, like, on his lap feeding him chicken soup and being like, now I'm gonna put my tongue in your mouth. And Ilya and the Italian agent, like, the Italian agent says something about, like, oh, what a pity that this has happened to Napoleon. And, like, he and Ilya are, like, 3 inches apart, and the whole time they're talking like this. And then, like, at the very end, Ilya's like, and I'm gonna go talk to Taffy, bye. It's really weird. Like, the Italian agent in particular, like, the way he's talking and, like, the way he has his hands on his hips and, like, the way he's looking at Ilya is all, like, total queer coding. And then Ilya's like, I'm going to go be heterosexual. I'll see you later.
Yeah, when I saw them, my brain just was like, did they, like, just sleep together or something?
That's what it seems like. Like, I unfortunately didn't write down the dialogue, but it's very charged. And seems very much like, that's what happened.
I gotta confess that I haven't rewatched the movies in years.
You should rewatch the last, 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do
there's
you
actually...
remember? Okay, go on. No, stick.
Train of thought derailed.
Oh, well, okay. Well, basically, what I remember about The Spy with My Face that wasn't in the Waverly affair, it's the fact that in the Waverly affair, Ilya only realizes that Napoleon had a double in the scene in which Napoleon is fighting his double. Like,
yeah.
at the very end. But in the movie version, he actually catches up to them in the sauna.
Yes.
And he tries to deal with the double, but he stopped. I don't quite remember how, but basically it's more satisfying, I guess, because you get to see that Ilya was actually doing something.
Ilya is capable of doing his job.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in the movie, like, the evil Napoleon clone gets shot by the thrush woman.
I think, doesn't he get shot by the thrush woman in both versions?
Yeah, maybe. I've totally forgotten exactly what happens in the double affair.
The sauna scene is interesting because Ilya does in fact. So, I am forgetting her name, the thrush woman. Yes, so she and Napoleon are in the sauna, and they're, again, for the, 50th time in the movie, they're implying that the two of them are going to do something hanky-panky, and, which, come on, it's a public sauna, you're gross. But Ilya comes in and is, confronts fake Napoleon, and it does imply that not only is Ilya, actually does know his friend, but also that he is, not completely incompetent. And there's a hint earlier on when the two of them are on the plane that something is wrong, because when they're sitting next to each other, and this, if I'm remembering correctly, this is not filmed the same way in the double affair version. Napoleon keeps looking out the window like he's refusing to look at Ilya or make eye contact with him, and Ilya keeps just kind of looking at him and frowning like something's not right and he can't figure out what. And that part does seem to be different than in the double affair. But my favorite difference in terms of Ilya figuring it out is that at the very beginning, they're talking about the plan to replace Napoleon with a double, and fake Napoleon is actually narrating, and he says, Kuryakin poses a threat to our plans in that he is a very close friend of Napoleon. And there's literally a pause between every word.
Oh my god.
And they do not say that in the original. They say something like, we want to keep him away from Kuryakin because he's more likely to realize that it's not him in the double affair. But in The Spy with My Face, they really, hammer home he's a very close friend. And since it's coming from, Robert Vaughn's voice, it's all the funnier.
Yeah.
Also, poor Kit Kitteridge gets murdered in The Spy with My Face, which does not happen in any of the episodes. And it's too bad, because I kind of like him, even though he has a totally inconsistent accent and is also an American Girl doll. There's a scene with him and Waverly at one point where Waverly is like, "Is your beard fake?" And Kit's response is, "Yes." And he just smiles broadly and then says, "The real one's in my pocket."
Yeah.
Waverly looks at him like, "Jesus Christ, I hate my job, and I hate every single person who works here."
He hates everyone except for his chair.
Yes.
No, please, don't bring this to the podcast.
Maybe I'll just leave it at that. It's an in-joke.
Also, Napoleon touches like 15 women in this movie, and the only one I actually buy him with is the evil masseuse.
Oh yeah.
So there's there's a scene where real Napoleon has been chained to a bed, and he is for some reason being massaged by a thrush masseuse. And, like, they do explain it, but the explanation is actually not convincing at all. They're like, "Well, we have to keep his muscles supple for when we kill him?" Which is like, what?
They're gonna eat him.
And, no! And it's super funny because, like, there's, you know, like, I don't totally buy his interest in Sandy. I only sort of buy his interest in the, like, scary thrush lady. And then this, like, evil masseuse who's, like, climbing on top of him and, like, digging into his muscles while he's chained up. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm into this."
And also, like, maybe it's just me, but the way it was filmed, like it kind of looks like that she was like
Napoleon
on top.
Solo is into pegging. And I shouldn't have said that out loud.
I mean, Napoleon absolutely has such a sub energy.
Oh, 100%.
I stand by
he's like,
always.
"Please."
Like,
yeah,
I always stand by the fact that he's a sub, absolutely.
Oh, 100%. Like, there's
like,
no
like,
doubt.
There's like the way it was filmed, like it was filmed with like her like angled up like above his back, and I'm just like, come on.
Hey, Napoleon knows what he likes.
Yeah.
So the double affair, when we did that one way back when, we talked about the fact that it's a really weird episode because the sort of crux of the story is that there's a cave with an evil energy inside it that, like, sucks you in if you look at it for too long, and also they plan to use it to fight aliens, which is, like, totally bananas and totally outside of the realm of any other stuff any other episode does. But holy crap, the cave looks really bad in color.
Oh,
yeah, it does.
The cave did not look great in black and white, but in color it's like, oh, they're standing 1 foot in front of a very poorly done matte painting.
Yeah, literally, as soon as they walked in, I was like, "Oh, that's a matte painting."
It's terrible.
Like they didn't even like put it a bit further back and then put some more like cave like stalactites in like the front and stuff. No, it's basically just a matte painting.
And it's not a good one because like sometimes they look okay, but in this case it was just bad.
Yeah. Matte paintings can look really good if they're done right, but this is not being done right.
Nope. Yeah, no, not a good matte painting. Very bad cave.
Yeah. It literally just looks like a set.
But on the other hand, the is he South African? I don't
Yeah.
remember.
He's
Yeah.
like,
or is he from another
wait.
fake African country?
No,
like
I
No,
think...
he actually they said he was from Liberia.
Okay, yes. The agent from Liberia.
So he is from a real country.
The agent from Liberia, he looks much better in color, if you know what I mean. Which is to say, I thought he was cute in the black and white version of the episode, but, like, in the color version, I was like, oh, he's really cute.
Yeah.
And I haven't noticed he has, like, a really cute little earring, too. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I missed all of this in the black and white version. And he's, like, a sexy pirate in the color version.
Oh yeah, I kind of was thinking that too. Like, he was kind of cute, Actually, I didn't really think of him as remotely attractive at all in black and white. Like, for me, like, I'm not as into him as you are, so for me, it was like not attractive in black and white. But in color version, he's kind of decent. You know what?
I wonder why. That's really weird. Like that. I don't know. That's interesting. I like. Just thinking about the fact that some stuff does in these episodes look better in the, like, black and white film version, but this particular man, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
And also Napoleon Solo's beautiful anime eyes.
Yeah, his beautiful eyes, they're, like, mostly brown. They have that little green tinge. And you're just like, ooh.
Oh my god, I love them. Once we start watching season 2, you're gonna die probably. It's gonna be all in color.
Yeah. I've actually already seen a lot of season 2, so I'm looking forward to rewatching it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say?
What really makes Spy with My Face worse for me is that it justifies why the Double Affair was such a bad episode. Because when I first watched the Double Affair, I was like, what's the point of this episode? Because it's really much worse than the rest of the episodes, I guess. I mean,
yeah,
it's maybe not as boring as some, but it makes so little sense. But when you know that it was basically made for a movie release, it makes more sense because it's like this big plot with so many details and so many circumstances, but at the same time, it's kind of boring and very heterosexual. And when you know that this movie, you go like, I see, okay.
it is interesting.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I actually feel like one of the things I wrote down was the extra backstory on Sandy was helpful. So
Yeah.
I think one of the things that frustrated me a lot about the Double Affair was the fact that, like, Ilya didn't notice that something was wrong with Napoleon, but
Yeah.
Sandy did.
True.
And in the Double
Yeah.
Affair, we didn't know enough about Sandy for that to make sense. Like, she just was
Yeah.
some rando who was like, I can tell you're not Napoleon. But she's given enough more time to kind of, like, grow as a character and to, like, let you understand what her relationship with Napoleon is, that you buy the idea that she's like, something's not right here. And so I
Yeah.
feel like giving Sandy that extra time was
Mhm.
really helpful in terms of, like, making it seem less stupid.
Yeah, definitely. Mhm.
And
Yeah, that definitely is very true.
yeah, and it's interesting because Napoleon never had a real girlfriend in the show apart from Sandy, and the
Yeah.
fact that she was a movie feature is like, okay, it makes more sense why she was his only girlfriend.
Agreed.
Mhm.
So I mentioned that it's really weird that they just kill poor Kit, and like Kit in the TV universe is apparently still alive, but Kit in the movie universe is super dead.
Yeah.
But the way he dies is so stupid. Like, fake Napoleon gives him a cigarette, and he takes like half a puff in and is like, cyanide, and then he dies. Which is like, I don't think that's how cyanide works, but also the thing that I actually thought was really interesting about it is that fake Napoleon tells Ilya, oh, this guy's a thrush agent. He recognized me, and I, had to fight him off, and I had to kill him. And Ilya's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And Ilya pulls a medical alert card out of his pocket that says, like, oh, this person's a diabetic, and he puts it in Kit's pocket, and later, when, like, the airline attendants find Kit's body, like, Ilya purposefully kind of puts himself in the situation to be able to, like, point out, oh, well, I guess he must have had, he went into a diabetic coma, basically. He needed some kind of medication that wasn't given to him. And it's so evil? Like, that Ilya just, like, carries around, like, medical alert bracelets, basically, to, like, put on people he's murdered. Like...
I wonder if, like, Uncle just, like, provides all their agents.
Well, exactly! Like, the implication is that this is, like, standard operating procedure, because, like, fake Napoleon just kind of, like, nods and goes along with it. And so, the idea that Uncle is just, like, planting corpses all over the world that are like, oh, he had a heart condition, wink, wink! Like, that's terrifying!
I guess is there are there like no autopsies in this universe that would be able to prove that, like, no, that's not what it actually was like? Do people just not give a crap?
It's like there's a 90s Sandra Bullock movie called The Net that's all about how, like, the internet has all your information on it and it can be used to, spoof things about your life. And there's a scene in it where, like, her friend ends up dying in a hospital because the evil computer people have killed him, but they change his medical chart so he's, like, quote, allergic to penicillin, and they're like, oh no, he was accidentally given penicillin and he died. And she's like, he's not allergic to penicillin, but no one listens to her because it was in his records. And it's like, you'd think that, like, at least one other person would be like, wait a minute, should we actually maybe check and see if this guy was, like... And I feel like that would happen as well in, like, the Uncle universe, where it would be like, does Kit have any family who could be like, wait, no, he's not a diabetic? Like... Or are we supposed to assume that not only are no autopsies being done, but that no one's corpses are ever being returned to their loved ones?
I mean, like, I maybe, like, just considering, like, how much death, like, Uncle and Thrush create and no one seems to really care, like, maybe everyone just kind of expects it, it's just the agents doing their thing.
I mean, they are spies, they are lone wolves, right?
Kit doesn't really seem like a lone wolf.
Yeah, I agree. He was such a good character.
I'm glad that he's still alive in the TV universe. where he can make...
I'm really starting to think that, like, the movies just are not even part of the TV canon. Like, they're just their own thing.
And they're definitely not, because they're fighting Wasp.
Yeah. It's easier not to see movies as a part of canon because they are pretty different from it, and they are like their own distinct product, I would say. Even though they're pretty similar to the canon.
Yeah.
So if you want to be like a Mango purist, you can always say that movies don't count.
Yeah.
Non-canon. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. when it comes to usually when it comes to things that are not the primary canon, I usually say I take some things from them and leave other things. I will give an example for the Reanimator fandom. I have read the novelization of the first movie, and there are definitely some things in the novelization that completely contradict the movie canon, but other things that don't, and I think are actually interesting things to add. So I kind of take some things that I like from the extended content that's not completely the primary content, and then leave some other things. And I think that's a good thing to do with these movies, and the Man from U.N.C.L.E. novels as well, because there's some things in them that just don't work with the primary canon, but other things are that's interesting, let's put it into the primary canon,
Yeah.
you know?
I can't wait until you watch the return of the Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
I feel I feel like I'm very, very nervous about watching that.
Yeah.
I mean, we can always say that it isn't canon because it's barely canon and nobody cares about it.
I think that generally speaking, old TV shows that suddenly are what if we have a revival movie 10 to 20 years later? It's no, that's a bad choice. Don't do it.
Yeah. It only worked in so few times out of all of them because I guess Star Trek did really well, but all the others...
Yeah, also
that's because
those weren't TV movies.
It takes place... Yeah, and it takes place in the same universe, but with a whole new cast of characters, for the most part. Of course, they still brought... I
mean, the movies with Kirk and Spock and Bones.
Yeah, Search for Spock and Journey Home.
Yeah.
Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel the big difference between that and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Returns or Return of Man from U.N.C.L.E. or the series Wise Guy has a similar thing where there's a 90s revival movie for the 80s series, and I think the big thing is that they're TV movies. And whereas Star Trek, they put real money into it to make the reunion films. There was some level of care and effort that was put into the creation of the new Star Trek movies in the 70s and 80s that there was really not put into these TV movie reunions for other series.
It's so wonderful.
Oh yeah, maybe should we do an episode for Return the Man from U.N.C.L.E. someday?
I don't want to watch it.
We could do a double feature of the Return of the Man from U.N.C.L.E. and the U.N.C.L.E. affair from the 18th. Because in the 18th there's an episode in which Robert One and David McCallum are both present. And
they play they're old friends from a spy agency within the A-Team universe, right?
Yeah. And there's BDSM. There is BDSM.
Well, that's nothing new.
Yeah, true. But you just need to see it.
Yeah, I should watch it.
I mean, I absolutely like the U.N.C.L.E. affair more than the Return of the Man from U.N.C.L.E.
I like to believe that at some point after season 4, they both are wow, things have gotten really weird and serious and awful. And then they decide to go, open a flower shop somewhere and live happily ever after.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's my goodness.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
And
then when they get it's the 2010s and gay marriage has been legalized in the U.S. and then they get married and they're old men and it's all cute.
No, but really, do you think that they would wait for the U.S.?
Yeah, no, they're international men of mystery. They can get gay married wherever they want.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I forgot about that.
They would get married in Sweden in whatever year it was. I don't remember, but I think Sweden was the first one to legalize gay marriage.
Hold on. First country to legalize same-sex marriage. It was the Netherlands in 2001.
Oh, okay.
So
2001, they're gonna haul their asses over to the Netherlands. They're gonna get married.
Yeah.
They could have also waited like 2 more years and just gone to Massachusetts.
Yeah. But the reason why the 80s movies are so important is because basically it's at least some additional content in all. And the fact that both movies read / fix is also very funny because you can see that there's no other way of
It's hilarious when official content reads as a fanfic.
Yeah.
Or it's even when it's created by the official creator and then it feels like a fanfic.
Yep. I appreciate that.
I've definitely encountered that before.
Yeah. I occasionally, while watching certain things, will, side-eye my husband to see if he is in any way reacting or if it's just me having, shipping goggles. I don't remember what we were watching the other day, but as something that felt very much like slash fiction was happening on screen in an otherwise heterosexual show, he just quietly muttered, "I don't think there's a straight explanation for this."
Oh, yeah. He knows. He's figuring it out.
Yep. So, definitely sometimes there are things, and I don't know if maybe that's partially when you have a writer who is, maybe that's where they came from, sort of, that they were originally more of a fanish writer or person, and then they became someone who wrote officially for something. That happened a ton with Star Trek. So there could be a legitimate oh, this feels fanish because it was actually written by someone who used to be in fandom.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We're getting pretty far away from the episodes, though. Should we call it a day?
Yeah, I suppose having a conversation about movies we haven't watched yet is really not all that productive. So probably yes.
Well, basically, the fact that the Man from U.N.C.L.E. is such a weird franchise, it has movies that are barely canon, and even episodes that are made into these movies are kind of tainted because the Double Affair and the Four Steps Affair are both pretty bad as episodes. It's weird, I would say. It's funny because it kind of shows you that the Man from U.N.C.L.E. was supposed to be a TV show first and foremost.
Yeah.
When you have many episodes towards the dynamics and stuff, it makes more sense than watching a single movie. That will be movies have pretty weird emphasis. They are basically trying to be James Bond, but they are not as spectacular as James Bond movies because you don't have many shoots on location. Neither do you have very good special effects. So basically,
Yeah, and just simply that Robert Vaughn is not meant for a James Bond like
No,
role.
he's
Robert
not.
Vaughn was a pretty good lead, but like you have to use him very delicately, I would say, because he doesn't work as many characters, and
Yeah.
there's kind of fundamental softness to him. So I would rather watch him cry than be James Bond.
Yeah. Yeah. The moral of the story is Napoleon Wump is better than Napoleon Bond.
And
I,
to be fair, he never cries in the Uncle.
he in one of the season 4 episodes
I think he
cries,
does cry
right?
like once in the 4th season.
What?
It's the one where he's being like tortured by the guy who.
Yeah, when he's being tortured in that one
Well,
episode in the 4th season, and he's like,
he kind of like he pretends to cry. It's played that way, I think.
We'll have to
when he's calling for Ilya, right?
Yes, yeah. Yep, yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. That's when I think he cries. Maybe he's not like openly weeping, but
yeah. And like if you want some recommendations about Robert Vaughn weeping, I have some suggestions.
if you or your friends are interested in Robert Vaughn weeping, you should check out these and other titles.
Yeah. I wanted to make gifs at one day. I thought it would be like maybe 10 gifs of him crying in different projects.
That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, maybe not 10, but like 6 or 7 or 8. It would easily be.
yeah. So, on that note, crying Robert Vaughn.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing. The poster for To Trap a Spy is extremely important. It says, "Uncles at work!" And that's its, like, thing that's supposed to draw you into the movie. And I just thought to myself, uncles at work? That's not thrilling. That's like, my Uncle Steve works at the paper mill. I went with him for a school project. Like, uncles at work. So
yeah,
anyway,
but, did you know that one of the Men from Uncle movies actually made more money in Britain than one of the James Bond movies? Like, I don't remember which one it was, but the Men from Uncle movies were super popular in the UK. Even
That's
more
really-
popular
yeah.
than James Bond.
That's very interesting. So we Americans want to watch the cool English guy, and the English people want to watch the dorky American guy.
Yeah.
So maybe they're really into uncles at work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds kind of cute though, because Napoleon and Ilya are like uncles, and then they're just like working.
Yeah. Uncles at work. There actually is a scene of the two of them in To Trap a Spy that is not in the original Vulcan Affair either, where they're in an apartment and they're drinking coffee and looking at they're looking at Andrew Vulcan's yearbook, and it's like so domestic and like so cute. And also, I was wondering if it's supposed to be one of their apartments, because otherwise we don't ever see their homes. And so I thought that was...
I think it might be. I have a theory that it's supposed to be Napoleon's apartment, because above the fireplace they have they have a model of a big ship,
Yeah.
and I think this is in the early phase when they were still trying to think of Napoleon as like being into the ocean. And they realized that wasn't
Robert
gonna
Vaughn
work.
can't swim.
Yeah,
yeah.
it is Napoleon's apartment, and as we remember from the MGM bills, basically
Yep.
coffee and did some oysters.
Anyway, it was very cute, and I liked it a lot.
Yep.
Yeah, that scene was absolutely iconic because it's so domestic and it has so many interesting details. Like, we see Napoleon in his sweater.
Yeah, it's very cute.
Mm-hmm.
And also when Ilya just comes and pours himself coffee, like he is very at ease. And
yeah, there's definitely a level of comfort there that is very telling.
yeah, and it was from the pilot, so you can see that he was already supposed to be like pretty friendly with Napoleon in the pilot.
Yeah.
Mm.
But of course, when you are watching like episode 21 of season 1, it's not that surprising already, but like if you watched it as the first episode of the show, it would be quite interesting.
Yeah. Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
well, on that note,
yeah, we should actually finish.
Yeah, since we also actually
Yeah.
managed to land on something like directly related to what we were supposed to be talking about. It's a miracle.
wow.
Yeah.
Professional.
All right. So
Yeah.
have a wonderful rest of your day, listeners, and we'll be back next week with what?
See Paris and Die.
I don't know.
All right.
I think it was
Yeah,
the
See Paris and Die
and
affair.
Die.
See Paris and Die.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And,
next
forward,
week news.
Look forward to some role play.
Oui, nous allons à Paris précédemment. Oui. Au revoir.
Very weak. Nice. Bye.
Bye. Good
Bye.
night.
До свидания.